Hey, it's Yay for Yarn, and this is Tapestry Crochet for Absolute Beginners Lesson 2. In this lesson, I want to talk about tapestry crochet in the round and what's the difference between working in the round and working back and forth in rows. And I also want to show you how to follow a pattern with a repeat. So here's the swatch from Lesson 1, where we worked back and forth in rows and we did this little heart motif. And here I've done the same heart motif in the round. Now there are a couple different things I want to point out about this heart in the round versus the heart that was worked back and forth in rows. See, I worked it here twice, so I repeated the same chart twice. But what I want to point out is if you look at the chart, this graph paper chart, which is, very similar to what most tapestry crochet charts are going to look like, the columns of stitches go perfectly vertically. And when you're working back and forth in rows, the columns of stitches will also go basically perfectly vertically. Whereas when you work in the round, your columns of stitches kind of tend to lean this way. So here's my center column, here's the stitch at the bottom, next row, next row, next row, next row, next row. And as you can see, each column of stitches kind of leans a little bit to the right. Now if you're a left-handed crocheter, it's going to lean to the left. So my point is, when you work a design in the round, you are going to get a little bit of a skewed shape versus what the chart actually looks like. So if you are making your own chart, you might do a couple different swatches and test a couple different variations of, making the chart lean the opposite direction that your stitches are going to lean. So if I were going to optimize this chart to be worked in the round, then I would make it kind of lean a little bit over to the left because my stitch columns are always going to slant to the right when I work it in the round. Another thing I want to show you about in the round versus back and forth is that as you can see here when we work back and forth, the texture and the shape of the single crochet stitches, seeing the edge of a stitch on the wrong side versus the edge of a stitch on the right side, it kind of leaves this jaggedy edge around your shape. And when you work it in the round, you kind of get much more of a smooth, polished, and neat look versus back and forth in rows, we kind of get all this little, wiggly stuff with, see here's the top of a blue stitch from the wrong side. That's a back of a color change. And it kind of looks a little bit messier worked back and forth in rows. So here I'm going to work this little chart right here. Now I'm going to show you how to work it as a repeat in the round. So I've got pink and purple in this chart. It doesn't matter what colors you use, you can make them whatever color you want. You can even do black and white and then just apply whatever color yarn you want to use, to make, I'm going to use my blue yarn and use that as the black squares and use my green yarn as the white squares. You can do that if you want. But I've just drawn it in the pink and purple that I'm going to use so you can see it and, see how it goes together with the chart. So I'm going to be doing kind of a little slanted line. And this looks kind of jagged at the moment, but what I want you to see here is that when we work a line that slants to the left, if you're a right-handed crocheter, then the line is actually very smooth and straight. So what I'm going for here is a smooth, straight line that leans to the left. If I were to flip it over, let's pretend that you could see the same colors as well on this side, and make it lean to the right, it would look more like this edge of the heart and be more kind of stair-step like. Again, that's for right-handed crocheters. If you are left-handed, then it will be the opposite because left-handed crocheters work in the opposite direction. They work from left to right, whereas if we're right-handed, we work from right to left. So if you're left-handed, then your heart, if it was this chart and you worked it the same way that I did, you would end up with a reverse image, a mirror image of this right here, because your stair-step edge would be on the left and your smooth edge would be on the right, and it would be skewed in the opposite direction. So I'm going to show you how to read this little chart as a pattern repeat, and I'm going to show you how to crochet this design in the round and a few tips that I like to use when I'm doing tapestry crochet in the round. So here's my purple yarn. I'm going to start by chaining the number that I want to start with. So this chart is 6 stitches wide. So if I want to repeat this chart in rounds, then I'm going to want to work a multiple of 6. So I could do 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, any number that is divisible by 6. So I am going to work my foundation chain, and I'm going to chain a number that's divisible by 6. I'm going to do 24. So there's my 24. I'm going to make sure that the chain is not twisted and bring the end around, and I'm going to slip stitch in the first chain. Now, if you haven't seen my video on the invisible slip stitch and chainless starting stitch, you're going to want to go watch that first, because that is my favorite way to start a row of tapestry crochet. If you work a tapestry crochet design in the round as a continuous spiral, then if you have any kind of stripe or anything like that, you get a jog in your stripe. So I'm going to be using the invisible slip stitch and chainless starting stitch technique to be able to have straight rounds that begin and end at the same point and are joined at the end, and yet still not have a turning chain going up the side of the work. So I'm going to start by taking my pink yarn, which is my secondary color, and carrying it. And because we're going to be working the chainless starting single crochet, which is basically to stretch this loop out and single crochet in the same stitch that we're already in, we want the top loop of that first stitch to be pink, because as you can see right here, the first stitch in my repeat is pink. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of unstitch that slip stitch, and I'm going to, instead of pulling through with my purple, I'm going to pull through with the pink. So now my loop is pink and the top of my stitch is going to be pink. So I'm going to start with my chainless starting single crochet by stretching the loop a little bit and working a single crochet in the exact same stitch that we're already in. Again, I am carrying my purple yarn over the top, so I have 1 single crochet in pink, a second single crochet in pink, but again, instead of finishing it, if you remember how we changed color from the previous lesson, instead of pulling that last yarn over pull through 2 through that last pink single crochet, we're going to switch to the purple and pull through with the purple. So we're finishing that last stitch in the purple. So now it says I have 1, 2, 3, 4 purple stitches. So I'm going to work 1, 2, 3, and then in the 4th one, as I finish the 4th one, instead of pulling through with the purple, I'm going to switch to pink, because my next stitch is going to be pink. So here's what we just did. We worked the first row of this chart, but we're not all the way around to the beginning of our row yet. So what we need to do is repeat that row. So I had 2 pink stitches, 4 purple, so I need to do 2 pink stitches and 4 purple again. So we just changed to pink. I'm going to work 1 regular pink stitch. My second pink stitch is going to switch colors at the end because the next stitch is purple. Then I've got 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th purple stitch is going to switch to pink as we finish it, because we're going to repeat it again. So I'm going to again work 2 pink single crochets. At the end of that second one, we're going to switch back to purple, because we're now going to work the next stitches in purple. 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th one, we're going to switch back to pink by pulling the last loop through that stitch in pink. Now we're going to again work one regular pink stitch. The second pink stitch is going to switch back to the purple, and then we're going to work our 4 purple stitches. 2, 3, and this is the last stitch, so this is the 4th one. And we're now going to work our invisible slip stitch into the top of this pink stitch. So because we're going to row 2 now, which begins with the purple stitch, we don't need to begin our row with a pink loop. So we're going to continue with the purple yarn, stretch the loop on the hook so that it doesn't come undone. I'm going to make sure that my yarn is in the back of the work and insert my hook from back to front through the first stitch of the round, which is that first pink stitch. Then I'm going to catch that purple loop and pull it through from front to back. So there's our invisible slip stitch. And now we can begin working the second round. So I'm going to tighten my loop to regular height. I'm going to stretch it just a little bit so it's tall enough to do the chainless starting single crochet again. So for this second round, what we're going to be doing is repeating this little sequence. 1 purple, 2 pink, 3 purple. Then we're going to do it again. 1 purple, 2 pink, 3 purple. So I'm going to stretch my purple loop, and I'm going to insert the hook into the same stitch that we just worked our invisible slip stitch into. It's the first stitch of the round below, which is right there. It's that first pink one. And just single crochet through it regularly. So that is our chainless starting single crochet. But this first purple stitch is the last purple stitch before the pink. So I'm going to kind of uncrochet part of that last stitch and make sure that I pull my new yarn through with pink. Then I've got 1 pink stitch. My second pink stitch, I'm going to switch back to purple because the next stitch is purple. Then we've got 1, 2, 3 purple. So we're at the end of our chart. We're going to go back to the beginning and repeat that same sequence again. 1 purple, switching to pink because that's the last purple stitch before pink. 2 pink, and switching to purple in the last part of that stitch. And then we have 3 more purple. And then again, we're going to go back to the beginning of the chart again and start with this 1 purple and then do 2 pink and then do 3 more purple. Now, one nice thing about working in the round and reading your chart in the round is that it's always going to be read in the same direction for every round. Whereas when we worked our chart that was back and forth in rows, we worked 1 row this way, then the next row we worked this way, and then the next row we worked this way. With this particular chart, it wouldn't necessarily matter because it is perfectly symmetrical, but if your design is not perfectly symmetrical, then you'll need to be reading your chart to work back and forth in rows. Back and forth in rows. You're going to read it back and forth. Whereas when we're working in the round, we can read it in the same direction every time because we are always working in the same direction. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of this repeat section of row 2 and do 1 purple, 2 pink, and 3 more purple. So here's my 1 purple, switching to pink to do the next 2 in pink, switching to purple again because the next stitch is purple. Then we've got 1, 2, 3 purple, and then we've got again 1 purple, switching to pink, 2 pink, and then switch back to purple and do 3 purple. Now again, because on the next round the first stitch of the round is still going to be purple and we're already working with purple, then we can work our invisible slip stitch with the purple. So I'm going to again stretch my loop out, make sure the working yarn's in the back, and insert my hook into that first stitch of the round from back to front, and then pull the loop through from front to back. So there's the invisible slip stitch. Now we're going to start working the third round of our little repeat chart. And so our third round is 2 purple, 2 pink, 2 purple, 2 purple, 2 pink, 2 purple. So because again, the first one is purple, we can work our chainless starting single crochet with the purple. And because the one next to it is also purple, we do not have to change colors in our chainless starting single crochet. We're going to change colors in the stitch following. So I'm going to stretch my loop just a little bit so it's tall enough. Insert my hook into the same stitch that I slip stitched into with the invisible slip stitch. It's the very first stitch of the round. Single crochet. Then I can work my second single crochet, which is this one right here, in the purple partially, and then finish with the pink because the next stitches are pink. So now we've got 2 pink, finishing with purple to work the next 2 stitches in purple. So we've got 2 purple, 2 pink, and then 2 purple. So we're going to go back to the beginning of the row again on our chart and work 2 purple, 2 pink, and 2 purple. So we've got 2 purple, switching to pink because the next 2 are pink, and then we switch back to purple in that last pink stitch to work the next 2 purple. So again, we've got 2 purple, and because that last stitch is the one before the pink one, we're going to switch to pink in the last stitch, work 2 pink, and switch back to purple for that last stitch to work the next 2 in purple. So that is our repeat for row 3. We're going to do it one more time. We've got 2 purple, and again, as we change colors, we're basically just not pulling that last loop through to finish the stitch. With the purple, we're pulling it through with the pink so that the next top of the next stitch is pink and not purple. So again, we're going to work those 2 pink and switch to purple by pulling the purple yarn through the last stitch instead of the pink. And then we've got 2 more purple. And again, because the next row begins with purple, and we can work our invisible slip stitch and chainless starting stitch with the purple. So I'm going to again stretch my loop, remove the hook, insert into the next stitch that we need to join into from back to front, and take that loop and pull it through from front to back. So there's our invisible slip stitch. And as you can see, we have an invisible join here. There's no turning chain or anything making a visible line up the side of the work. And we still don't have a jog in our pattern because the rounds are worked individually without being in a continuous spiral. So now we're going to start working on row 4. And on row 4, as you can see our chart here, we have 3 purple, 2 pink, and then 1 purple. So we've already got our purple loop right here. We're going to again start with the chainless starting single crochet and just keep the loop stretched a little bit and single crochet into the same stitch that our loop is coming from. So that's the first single crochet, the second, and of course in that third, since the next stitch is pink, we're going to pull the last loop through in pink. Then we've got our 2 pink. Since the next is purple, we pull the last loop through with the purple, and then 1 purple. So we've got 3 purple, 2 pink, and then 1 more purple. So we're going to repeat that again. 3 purple, switching to pink in the last loop, 2 pink, switching to purple in the last loop, and then 1 purple. So that's a second repeat of our sequence. Again, every time we get across this little row, we're going back to the beginning and repeating it again. So here we go. 1, 2, 3 purple, switching to pink in the last loop. Here's 2 pink, and then switching to purple in the last loop, and then there's our 1 purple. So that's our 3rd repeat. We've gone back to the beginning and went across this chart a 3rd time. Now we're going to do it again. So we're still on purple. We've got 1, 2, 3 purple, switching to pink in the last stitch, 2 pink, switching back to purple in the last stitch, and then 1 purple. So because again our first and last stitch are purple, and the next first stitch in the next row is also purple, we're going to use our purple to do the invisible slip stitch and the chainless starting stitch. So there's our invisible slip stitch, and again, as you can see, there's no visible line or turning chain or anything in our round join. So for our last row, we've got 4 purple, then 2 pink. So I'm going to do my chainless starting single crochet in the same stitch, which counts as the first one. Then we do 3 more, switching to pink in the last stitch, 2 pink, and then we switch to purple in the last stitch. So we had 4 purple and 2 pink. Now we're going to do 4 purple and 2 pink again. And always switching to the other color when we get to the last stitch of the current color. So there's my 2nd repeat, and again we're just going back to the beginning of the row and repeating that little sequence again. So that was our 3rd repeat. We're going to do 1 more to get back to the beginning of the round. And so our last stitch is pink. And because we're going to be doing our invisible slip stitch into a purple stitch, you could finish this last pink stitch with the pink and pull a pink loop through that first stitch if I was going to repeat this sequence again. So if you weren't going to repeat the sequence again and you just want to finish with the purple, then we would pull that last loop through with the purple and do our invisible slip stitch with the purple. But because this chart, if we wanted to repeat it and work these rows again, the first stitch of that first row would be pink. So then you would have to finish with the pink and work the invisible slip stitch with the pink. And that gives a very neat overall look. Now, even though this is just a swatch, I would not actually repeat this chart again, because as you can see, when we come up here, the next 2 pink stitches on this first row would actually start like that. So we would have a kind of a jog or a offset in our diagonal stripes. So for this to actually, work as repeating it in rows and it be, a smooth continuous line, we would have to add another row to the bottom of this chart where we did 1 pink, 4 purple, and then 1 pink for it to actually flow smoothly as, a repeat in rows. But I don't necessarily care because this is just a swatch. And what I wanted to show you was the diagonal lines that you can get in tapestry crochet when it's worked in the round, and how you can join those rounds of tapestry crochet with the invisible slip stitch, avoiding the jog in your stripes and avoiding that visible turning chain line. So I hope this video has been helpful to you. If you want to see more videos on tapestry crochet for absolute beginners, leave me a comment down below. If this video was helpful to you, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe, making sure you click the little bell next to the subscribe button to be notified of new videos. Thanks for watching.